sound, right?
Bonjour, hello, I'm Rebecca Leffler. I'm a journalist, content creator, do a lot of different things, // just like all of our guests here today. So the introductions for all of you are very similar. It's very complex. So can I just ask all of you to introduce yourselves? Who are you? What do you do? Where do you live? Go for it. Jimmy, you want to start?
Yeah, why not? My name is Jimmy Jean-Louis. I am based in Los Angeles. I've been there for about 22 years, and I act mainly, but I also produce.
My name is Icho, and I'm an artist, filmmaker, and influencer, and I'm also based in LA.
My name is Rotem, Shamir. I am a filmmaker, mainly doing television from Israel, writer and director.
That's the simple version. They're all very acclaimed. We'll talk about all of your projects after this. And so I actually am not even sure which language to speak, because I know you all speak, 5 languages, 100 languages between you all. And language used to be a barrier for shows. It would only be watched locally, or everyone would just watch American shows. And now, you have shows like Fauda that are huge hits all over the world. So I wanted you to maybe speak to that. And I think, Rotem, maybe you can talk about your latest project, which is, I think, really shows this kind of multicultural hybrid.
Yeah, so we are setting up a new show that we're supposed to start shooting in the middle of August in Antwerp, Belgium. It's a show called Diamonds, and it's the story of an Orthodox Jewish family in the diamond business in Antwerp. It's a big community that was dealing with diamonds for many, many years. And it's a show that will take place in Flemish, Yiddish, and English. And cast and crew are from all over the world. So basically, I think that's the most international show that I've been involved in. International content is a phrase that's being tossed around for many years now, or for definitely the last few years. But I feel this is the first show that I've been involved in that is actually very international, all in the themes and in the story, but mainly in the people that are involved in the show. And the language issue that you're talking about, for me as a director, to go and direct a show that is 70% of the show is going to be in Flemish, which is a language that I don't speak. So it's a very unique situation for me. I feel like it does kind of makes my job more about subtext and body language and motivation of character. So in that sense, language for me, it was almost somewhat of a barrier between me and the actor. Fauda was my first experience working with a language that I don't understand, which is Arabic. Arabic has the same kind of music that Hebrew does. So in that sense, I was closer to the language, but I still didn't speak it. And I had somebody with me on the monitor all the time to explain to me if somebody is doing something wrong, saying that, there's dialects, there's, nuances of acting. All those things can be lost for somebody that doesn't know the language. But I felt after a little while that I'm getting the grasp of it and understanding at least the behind the language, what is behind the language. So in that sense, Diamond is the next step for that. And I'm very proud to be a part of that show.
And do you all think, you can answer this, or any of you, do you think that it's important to represent stories in their native languages with subtitles versus, just translating everything into English? Or what has been your experience? I know, Jimmy, you filmed movies in Africa. You film a lot in Africa, but for international audiences. You want to talk about your last experience filming there?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep the original language, just so you don't destroy the cultural identity of that place. If we translate everything in English or in French, then almost like we say that we don't care about that side of the world. So I think it's important. One of the latest movies that I did, which was an original content for Netflix, called Citation, which was shot in Nigeria and Senegal. And I think it's probably one of the first time that the entire crew was African. African content, but that was, international platforms such as Netflix, being able to sort of showcase Africa from an African point of view, not from a foreigner coming in. So, and we spoke many languages in the movie. We spoke English because Nigeria speaks English. We spoke French because Senegal speaks French. We also shot in Cape Verde, so we spoke Portuguese. And and some of Yoruba from Nigeria. So yes, definitely believe that that it's important to keep the original language, if we want to have a fully inclusive, diverse world. Yeah.
It must be really fun for the subtitling of these projects to
Right.
go from Yiddish to,
Subtitling and dubbing, yeah.
yeah.
More work for the talents, more people dubbing.
And do you want to talk about your latest project? It's a feature
Yes.
film, but it's quite international as well.
Yes, my movie will be shot in English. So I'm not an exception, but I've been working on it since the last 5 years, and it's my first feature film. So I wanted to bring an international team and cast, mixing legends, many award-winning, Oscar-winning legend with younger talents. So it will be shot in Rome. And so I've been preparing since the last 6 months in Rome to get ready for this fall.
Well, we look forward to that. And I guess this is a question, kind of a state of the industry question. Diversity, inclusion have been huge topics in Hollywood, especially this year. Do you think that things are starting to change? The fact that, you're making all of these projects, do you think things are changing, or do you find that it's still challenging to convince, to tell a story about an Orthodox community in Yiddish, to tell stories, about Africa? Do you think that it's, as a woman in the industry, do you think that there is representation, or do you think that we have a long way to go?
I think there's definitely a change, given also the Oscars results this year. But I think there's still, although I think there's much more awareness and an attempt to be more inclusive and diverse, definitely. But I think on a day-to-day level, and not on the awards or shows or, packaging movies or shows, but I think on a day-to-day level, I think being a female, and for me that I started my entertainment company recently this year, it has been very difficult. I've met people who try to blackmail me and force me and to, sink into certain ways. But, I was lucky enough to be able to find a great team that, believe in me and help me to navigate through and learn every day the ABC of the industry.
Great. Well, and you're all, I would say, jet setters, but in the most elegant sense of the term. You're used to kind of traveling all over the world. What has the past year been like for you? How has this affected your projects? How do you think it will affect basically the production moving forward? Jimmy or Rotem, you wanna?
I actually was fortunate enough to shoot a show in Israel, during COVID, which was pretty crazy. I think for a little while there we're the only show shooting in the world or something along those lines, because and that was a very unique and surreal experience. In a way, I think for everybody, maybe it had the same kind of idea that it brings you back home, literally, in every sense. Internationality is great, and having the ability to change our culture and exchange cultures is amazing. But I think eventually home is home. And in a sense, when you go back and you kind of observe that family-wise, culture-wise, that is something that is a currency that you can later on go and trade with others. In a way, we're all looking for honesty in our art form, I think. And the best way to find that eventually is, you can go around the world and learn other people's languages and other people's cultures. But when you speak your own, I think you're being the most honest.
I think that's interesting because, I think the question you probably get a lot is how were you surprised that, these I would say very Israeli based stories travel so well? And it's interesting because when you look at French cinema, it's always the most French of the stories that travel so well. And I think, but now in this day and age of Netflix and everything, when you're making projects, do you have the whole world in mind? Or are you kind of like Rotem, just thinking, I'm just going to do this. If people see it all over the world, great. But I'm not thinking of the whole audience. How are you approaching it?
Personally, I think it's good to do a project because you want to do it, not necessarily because you want people to see it a certain way or because you want to do it for a specific audience. It's because you think that the subject matter is worthy of being made. But at the same time, I think COVID-19 sort of forces us to to think slightly differently, because before, normal filmmaker would probably aim to go to the theaters and then probably go to there's a structure that was already in place. But I think COVID-19 sort of forced things to go so much quicker. And now everybody's looking straight at Netflix, straight at Amazon. It's like we bypass the cinema route. I mean, it will always exist, but it's just that the streamers became so much more important because everybody was stuck at home watching contents, and they are the ones who made millions. So yeah, I think that it did force some of the filmmakers to think slightly differently, because you have some die-hard filmmakers that believe that movies should be watched in a theater, which I understand. And I think some of them are maybe thinking differently now, because at the end of the day, it's show business. So there's always a business aspect in movies. So yeah.
Well, we were stuck at home watching shows, but we also were able, because of that, to travel to Italy and China and Africa and Israel. And, I think that it really got people to, in this new normal, to be able to travel to other places they wouldn't necessarily go before. So I think it has, in a way, opened up more of the world.
I think even before COVID started, there was the start of I would say, the end of the American cultural colonialism that we kind of were under, in a sense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't done out of evilness or anything like that. It was just done out of this culture impact that American movies and TV shows had on everybody. Yeah. And it started to crack before COVID, and COVID was, just as you explained, kind of made it faster for people to be able to, dive into their Netflix and, dust off the regular shows and just go deeper into what's there and find all these international shows. And when you do that, you feel not only that you have, different languages and stuff like that, but you have stories that weren't told in that same authenticity like they are told right now. And in that sense, I think people are finding all these little, gems from around the world and open up their minds to it.
Yeah, coming from different point of views, then you have different results, and which is beautiful. And those giants, without knowing, are actually helping everybody, as far as education is concerned. That means now we can actually see a little show from Thailand emerging, being in the top 5 of Netflix. Yeah. It's something that would have been impossible like five years ago.
Yeah. And so, I think a good example is Hostages. That was, a huge success in Israel. And then there was an American remake, and now I think people would just watch the original and not even do a remake.
Yeah, I had a bump, I guess, with that kind of. Hostages was made 7 years ago, so that was my first kind of like bump with American culture, in the sense that they remade the show, and it was a very different show, like you said. And now I had a show coming into Israel, shooting in Israel. It's an American show that's going to be released on Netflix, and the first couple of episodes are taking place in Israel. It's the same people that made Fauda, and they were looking for somebody to kind of like, be a bridge for the American crew that comes in and show Israel in a way that doesn't look like it's being Americanized. So there's a sensibility now that wasn't there before, that we're not just coming in, like stepping in with
like cowboys.
Yeah. Not just coming in,
you can say it.
Yeah, they have this sensibility of like thinking, okay, we can't show Israel not through Israeli eyes. We need a mediator, at least, in the way that we tell a story. So that, I think, is just a revolution. It's in the making, but it's definitely starting.
So you think audiences are getting smarter?
They're getting more.
Even American audiences?
I think they are. I mean, what is media? What is TV? It's a form of education. So, if a kid can watch an American show today and watch an Israeli or even a Norwegian show tomorrow, then they're getting bits of that culture as well, as they're still being entertained. So I think they'll also be able to tell you that this show here is not as good as you want us to believe. So, they'll be able to make their own choices. So to that point, I think, there are more choices. So they're all a bit smarter as far as choices that they can make for themselves. You don't just force them to watch whatever you want.
And you all make this look very easy, the whole international hybrid co-production. But I mean, I guess maybe you can talk a little bit about, what does it actually take to create an international co-production? I know you work with a lot of brands, for example, in terms of financing, any advice or how that works? When you start out to make a project, how are you thinking about it and which brands?
I think, first of all, I wanted to pick up your last question about the idea of content during pandemic. I think the pandemic has definitely propelled our societies decades forward. And I think it has also helped to experiment and introduce a democratization of distribution channels and distribution formats, not only going from movie theaters to streamers, but also to certain social media platforms during the pandemic. So I think that's very interesting for me, that I'm have always been fascinated by the usage of social media, making all of us in a way a mini studio. If you think about everybody, in a way carries the seeds of content creation and distribution. So in relation to your question about the co-production, I think I have always worked with different brands, and definitely, I don't necessarily do it for the money with them, but I think it's interesting to be able to incorporate them naturally in the ecosystem about content, rather than just the classic advertising format. And I think we will definitely see more and more of those hybrid content between brands and creative formats. And so for my movie, it's been quite challenging because I've been working since the past 5 years on and off on it. But finally, we are about to make it happen. So I'm really excited. And I look forward to sharing more with you guys as we move forward.
We look forward as well.
Thank you.
I guess for Rotem and Jimmy, you both worked in feature film, but also in TV, and as both kind of are changing in many different ways as we discussed, do you approach these projects differently, or do you look at it all as just kind of, okay, it's a creative content that I'm producing and the format doesn't matter? Or, when you're creating as an actor, as a creator, when you're making a series, you have kind of more time versus in a feature film, maybe it's a little bit more exciting. I don't know. Do you approach it differently?
For me, it's very different. I think there's a reason why films are kind of like a film by the director, and in television it's a showrunner, which is usually a head writer. Television is a plot. Story is king in television, and in film, the visual language can control the process. So that makes it a very different process for me. As a director, I would definitely say that I'm more attracted to film in that sense, because I think it's kind of, it develops your language to a more interesting and elaborate way. But as a writer or as a storyteller, I can say that television has a bigger scope. It's more towards the novel sense of things, because you have, like you said, a bigger place to develop characters and storylines and everything. You create a whole world in television, basically, and not just follow one story. But in that sense, I think even though television has attracted some big talents lately, and they have huge scope shows like Game of Thrones that are being done on television, it needs to stay away from film in that sense, that there are two different formats for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you said quite a bit. I've been following. I've done both as an actor. And I think television started to be extremely interesting around the time when I think I was doing Heroes. So, it was a time where you had excellent shows coming up. Heroes, Lost, Desperate Housewife. And so that's when a lot of those actors coming from movies will cross over. And the same for directors from movies coming down to on TV. And now it's difficult to distinguish, It's okay to do TV and movies, which is great, for actors anyway. You don't feel bad anymore to say that you're doing one thing and not the other one. So you don't being looked down upon. But as he said, it's two different worlds, TV as an actor, you just do as you're told, because that script, not one word will change. It's just what it is. because it's being worked on by so many writers and so many producers controlling everything, many narratives. So as an actor, you're just almost like in a box. In movies, you can have a conversation with the director, with the writer about your character. It's a process that you're doing together. So it's like there's an art form that is still there. And for an actor, I think it's probably a little bit more rewarding, to do movies. But it's just, there's a little bit more money in TV. It depends on what you need.
Well, speaking of boxes, you mentioned heroes, and in this show you played. That's how I first knew you. Your character was called the Haitian, and so you're representing your originally your origins, but now you're playing roles, and you're not just the Haitian actor. You're just an actor.
Yeah.
Do you think that in terms of diversity and inclusion, do you find that your career do you see that it's going in that direction, or do you still think that in terms of being typecast in certain roles and
the notion of typecast has never been applied to me somehow, just because I tackle the business from so many angles. I do movies in the States, in France, in Africa, in the Caribbean. So if I'm typecast, what is it? So I can understand that maybe in America they might want to see me more in a certain type of character that I even there I still do comedy, I do action, and so no, I wasn't never stuck anywhere, just because I don't represent the type that can be typecast easily either, because there's always that question mark. You're not sure. So if you're not sure, then it can be anything. So, and I try to play as much with that as I can, like I could be from the Caribbean. I could be from France. I could be from Africa. I could be from America, because, we have lots of immigrants. So it's like, how do you force them to just accept that reality? If you go to New York, it's full of people from all over the place. So why not completely casting people from all over the place in your TV shows or in your movies? Exactly. Those are just simple things, simple facts. The same for Paris, the same for even in Israel, you probably have, but it's like the business is still a bit scared of it, because they also say that, but our audience will not. No, your audience will accept it if you give it to them, I believe.
That said, audiences, for example, I don't know if you've experienced this, but most American audiences or audiences around the world, when we think of all of your hit shows, they're Israeli, there's a lot of police drama, there's thriller, there's adventure. So have you been it's almost being typecast in a way in terms of content? Like, do you find that that's what they want now? Like, you feel like if you wanted to do a romantic comedy tomorrow, do you think that you would be able to, or
in my home country?
Or even if you went into Hollywood and said, look, I want to make a romantic comedy.
Hollywood is different in that sense, because Hollywood is like it typecasts you immediately to the role. So for example, when I was when Fauda became a hit, so everything that has a stand in the end of it, like trajectory stand, Afghanistan, anything, Pakistan, everything was sent to me immediately, because I directed Fauda. But of course, I have nothing to do with these stories. So but it's like Jim explained it, in the sense that you need to force them to understand that you are not you're not only the project that you got famous for. Obviously, if that project got you where you wanted to go, that's great. But then it's up to you to kind of like let them understand that you have many other stories that you want to tell in many different angles. So I think in the last couple of years, as I was more and more interacted with Hollywood, I got to understand that once you explain yourself, once you give them all the other angles of the way that you tell stories, they are able to open their minds a little bit. And that's America. In Israel, it's different, because we are a very small industry and everybody knows everybody. So in a sense, we're just like a flip-flop kind of business meeting. And in that sense, everybody can hear everybody more clearly. So that I would say the advantage of a small industry is that you have your own voice. You're not just you're not behind a big agency or a big management company. It's just like you in front of the broadcaster. In that sense, I think it's more open.
And you can probably speak to this. I mean, you're known to some people as a famous artist, but then in other circles, it's from the fashion and brand world. And now you want to make a film. Do you find that it's actually harder in a way to convince them that all of a sudden you're doing something else? Or do you think it's actually easier because they know you from something else? They see that you're creative?
I think it's about being consistent and coherent. And I think it's not about necessarily the industry or the medium, but it's about the stories, about the content. And I think that determines the surface, which could be a marble, which could be a movie and pellicule, or a piece on social media. So I think the content drives the medium, not vice versa.
And in terms of deciding where you're going to shoot, I mean, you're making a movie in, I think your last project was, where did you film your last project, or your upcoming project is a little bit in America, but a little bit in France.
In France, a little bit in Prague,
and you're all over, and in Belgium, and I'm wondering if, and Rome, do tax credits play into this? How do you decide? Is it story first, and then you decide where to film, or is it, okay, well, if we film here, there's a tax credit, or talent can come? Does that play a role?
From the producer's point of view, probably.
Yeah.
I think it would probably play a role. For me as a storyteller, no, I absolutely will go where the story leads me. So that the show that we're shooting in Belgium can take only place in Antwerp, in that small society. It's the size of a very small village. So, and that I think is the wonder of that community, and that's what makes it worth a TV show. And during our attempts to finance this thing, we had many suggestions to do it somewhere else, because it's the world of diamonds. Everything is sexy. You want to do heists with people hanging from the ceilings, and blood diamonds in Africa, and people are just like pulling you in all directions, trying to kind of make this show. If you only put this element in it and you shoot it there, then but of course you need to understand that the story you're about to tell is very, very, very specific. So I was kind of like pushing back all these attempts to make this show different, because it needs to take place in that very, very small area in Antwerp, in Belgium. So that's what attracts me.
Okay, and so I feel like you're all already living your dreams, but if someone said to you tomorrow, okay, you can make a project, you can create a project as a director, writer, producer, whatever role you want, acting in it, where would it be? Who would be involved in it? What would it be about? What language would it be in? What would be your dream scenario today?
That will never happen.
I think I'm already living my dream, like you said, because I just created my company, an entertainment company.
No, but it's true. You never have that choice. Do whatever you want, wherever you want, whatever you want. I mean, it is a dream question, but because the business is so hard, as we all know. It's like you can only have maybe one of those 5 things that you mentioned. If you have one, then you have to.
It's a rhetorical question.
I know, but
you can even start like actors dead or alive if you want. It can be directed by
No, I hear you.
Godard and starring.
But I have to say, I grew up as a kid, as I wanted to make big action American movies. That was my dream, right? And I think I'm the closest to fulfilling that dream than I ever was. But I slowly understand that it's not my dream anymore, because I would be very happy to be given the opportunity, and I would probably enjoy it a lot. But I found out that the stories that I'm interested in telling are personal in that sense. So the more I guess grow up or grow older, the more I understand that it's not about getting the big budgets, big industry, big awards at all for me. It's about finding something that I'm passionate about, and a story that I want to just like bite into. So in that sense, I think my dream is changing to the point that it becomes more and more realistic. So that's an optimistic view, right?
That is very much so. I think I caught you. Please continue.
Yes. So I said, I think I am already living in my dream, and I have been living since always in my dream. So I think I've been lucky enough, but also working hard to be able to accomplish whatever I would like to do. And so I just started this year creating my entertainment company in the US and in Italy. Definitely shooting Rome from a producer standpoint is for tax credit purposes. But also I was really inspired by many interviews I've listened of my production designer, Dante Ferretti. And when I was during the pandemic in LA last year, and I originally thought to shoot in the US, but then I listened to many interviews. He always complained in the interviews, oh, no director wants to come to shoot in Cinecittà. Everyone wants to go to Prague or Georgia. And so I got inspired because most of my team coincidentally are Italian for this very particular movie. So I thought it was easier in case there's a lockdown to, just everybody can just stay neatly in their homes rather than being somewhere. So for that choice, and also because I truly love Cinecittà and Rome, where I grew up. So I wanted to do something homage to the city where I spent most of my childhood and teenage years.
It's interesting. It's all very similar. Like you all traveled all over and done so many international things. And I think the theme is that you're all ending up kind of going home in a way. And I know, Jimmy, you're international star, but Haiti, I don't know if you want to talk about, you do a lot of things to kind of bring what's happening in Haiti to light, and you were really active after anything happens there.
Yeah, I guess it's just a question of identity. When everything disappears, there's only one thing that stays. It's who you truly are, and that's what drives you back to your roots. To what really is of value for you, and it's often places that you grew up at, families, friends, just simple things. So I think it's normal. So it's not by coincidence that I'm extremely attractive with with Haiti and some of the work that I'm doing there. I think it's normal, especially a place like Haiti that needs so much help because we're not doing well at all from a political point of view, economical point of view, and based on the historical past of Haiti, I think Haiti just deserves better, So that's why it's an extra reason for me to sort of try to put some positive lights on Haiti and always bring a level of awareness on the country. So yeah.
So in sum, you can always go home again, and yeah. I don't know. Do you have questions from the? We can take questions and then we'll continue. Yeah. Not yet. Okay. Do you have any questions for each other?
Yes, I have one. So you said before, like you always tend to play the same characters. What characters do you think people want to put you in? And why?
Well, I mean, I don't think I play the same characters. Yeah, I think I don't play the same characters at all. As I said, I've done comedy, drama, sci-fi, action, and all kind of things. But for example, in America, most of the content in a movie or TV show, if there's a brother, usually we know what kind of brother it might be.
Like what? Like what kind of brother?
So those are just normal things. But I don't necessarily fall into that hole because I'm unlike any typical Black Americans that you have. So I'm completely outside of that box. So I don't fall into any box at all. I just don't. But being Black and I'm not small, automatically there are some roles that will be attractive for them to give you, and
like
it's up
which
to
ones?
me to, I mean, I don't know, for you to make it up. She wants me to speak.
No, I don't want to speak.
I want to ask
curious.
you to be like a ballet dancer or
yeah, exactly. Which I used to be. I used to dance.
Oh, wow.
Actually.
Yeah,
I used to work in musical theater, but nobody would think in the mind to cast me in those kind of roles.
But I heard Matthew McConaughey speaking about how he got out of the romantic comedy box that he was put in Hollywood by not working for 2 years.
Yeah.
By saying, I'm gonna make this suicide move on my career, and force them to just offer me more serious roles. So I basically am saying that you probably had to make those tough choices when being sent these scripts that you said, no, you guys are putting me back in the box.
Yeah.
And for me to stay out, I need to give up on big money roles, maybe, big career moves and stuff like that. So this is you kind of like, forcing the system to take you more seriously. Am I right?
Yeah, what I do is actually, yes, you're right. And also what I do is I use the fact that I can also do exceptional work in other places that maybe America doesn't care too much for, but gives me great joy. And sometimes it circles back into America. So then it gives you a panel of work that, okay, this is what I do in America, this is what I do in France, this is what I do in England, this is what I do in Africa, and then you put that together, you're like, okay, so now they can take you a little bit more seriously, or they can see you with layers and not just with what they would give you if I didn't go out there to look for other things as well.
Yeah, I would say that's the true cultural revolution, is the sense that, people from inside the industry are able to recognize exactly that, to say, the power is not concentrated in on this small a small amount of people that will make a decision for us all. We are our own producers, our own creators and storytellers, and we will tell these stories whether we like it or not, in a sense. So once you have that kind of attitude, you kind of force the system to listen.
Completely.
And I think one thing that I guess Netflix and all these global platforms have done is I think that their networks and platforms are listening more to audiences, and it's like, it doesn't really matter what they think. If people are watching, they want it. And so I think we've seen that, with it would be before, it would be okay, a show doesn't perform well, network cancels it, it's over. And now then network will cancel it, and then fans will complain, it'll be on another platform, it'll take off.
Sure.
And so I think that the audience has a voice as well in all this.
It was all according to Americans' point of view. You know what I mean? So if you don't do well after the first season, you're out. But maybe in parts of the world they would love it. But you're right. Now everybody else can see it. So
I remember when I was living in New York, I used to watch. They did trailers for foreign movies without a single sentence in the language, if you remember. It was complete. It was just music and just fading of because they were afraid that the audience will hear a foreign language and say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the movie."
Funny, I never know.
That's the way it used to be for years and years. Because they thought that the American audience is not ready to hear anything but English. It will scare them off. But of course, reality is very different. People are smarter. People want to be culturally divided. They want to hear diverse. They want to hear more things. So
it's probably why the movie The Artist.
I was just thinking of The Artist. It was literally
because
silent.
Jean didn't speak. Because if he spoke, he would have lost.
I completely
literally silent. That's exactly what I was thinking of the whole time. Like, yeah. But it used to be, and I've seen this actually. It's interesting, at a festival like Monte-Carlo TV Festival. It used to be like this in Cannes. It would, we'd be writing about it. And it would be, okay, this film is from this place, with this director, an Italian director, or this film is from Italy. And then it's become, over the years, like it's an Franco-Italian director. The film is Swiss/Belgian / whatever. And I feel like now, in terms of TV and co-production, it's all very similar. And you are actually personifying this, I think, all of you. You're from all over the place. You're doing so many different things. I mean, Rotem, you mentioned you studied in New York, you lived in New York, but you're from Israel. I mean, so everyone's lived kind of everywhere. So it's really nice to meet people who, when you say, where are you from? And the answer takes like 20 minutes. But I think that you're personifying, I guess, the state of TV, really.
Right. I guess it's great for people like us because it's been hard in general for past generation. It's only this generation that's having a small break, and it's not there yet, but at least there's a beginning of something, where everybody can have a chance to express themselves. So
And especially with social media, I mean, you're really big on social media, but that you can have, an artist on YouTube that then the music that takes off, or someone can make a little film that goes viral. And
I can hear my son screaming at the computer when he plays, computer games. So I was like, "Who are you talking about?" He's like, "A kid from China," and he was like, and together now they're a team. They're attacking the same house together.
Do they watch does your family, does that play a role in what you're doing? Like their feedback, does that affect what you're making?
My sons are a little too young for my shows, so they're not
gonna
allowed
say,
to watch.
I think I'm a little too young for your shows.
But I have a 15-year-old daughter, so she watches and she likes it.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else you want to maybe talk about your, I mean, we heard about your latest project, but you guys, I know you're working on something, I think, with the US as well, or Jimmy, you want to talk about, you're in a very big film coming out
no,
soon.
I
You
mean,
wanna
that
talk
one is
about?
small.
Yeah.
It's a very small part, but yes, it is a pretty well big movie, which is a movie directed by Zhou and Anthony Russo. It's called The Gray Man, with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and Billy Bob Thornton. I mean, it's just well packed. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be on set with those guys, especially with the brothers, because those guys are just geniuses. You know, it's they've created a space for themselves in the industry, and they're going higher and higher. So it's a very exciting project, and I'm very glad to be part of it. And 2 weeks after, I'm gonna do a French TV.
That's great.
With Sonia Roland, Tropique Criminel. So just to tell you that I just go.
You're a dancer. You already said.
Yeah, exactly. You know. So and I don't mind, and I like that. You know what I mean?
That's the way to go.
Shake it up. Yeah. And what about your project?
I'm actually after I finish in Belgium, I'm hopefully off to direct my first Hollywood feature, which is a movie that's supposed to take place in New York. It's an action film that I'm still casting at this point.
I do action.
That's great.
And then back to season 2 of Line in the Sand, and
Oh wow, that'll be a
yeah,
nice jump. Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, season 2. Well, we have to first get through season 1.
Right.
But merci beaucoup, I guess, to everyone. Any questions here?
Go ahead. Yeah, I was wondering, Jimmy, what you leave France? You mentioned you've been living in LA for 23 years. I was wondering why did you leave France? Is that because they were putting you in a box more than you reflected more in America, or
I left
what was your decision based on?
because I was struggling. It was difficult. There was, if there was a box, I'd be happy. There was no box at all. When I left, there was no box at all. I was looking for a box. Any box would have made me happy. I mean, listen, a box is better than no box, okay? No, it also, I left Paris when I was about 19 or 20 because there was nothing going on for me. I'm talking, that's a long time ago. To the point where I was pretty much homeless. You know, I was squatting places, you know, and I was getting thrown out because I didn't have, it was just impossible to do anything. There was nobody on TV or in the movies that represented me, and there was no space for someone like me. So I just got tired.
Weren't you modeling?
I was modeling. I was doing everything, dancing, modeling. I would do all kind of dance you wanted, but I still couldn't open any box. so yeah, and it's really out of frustration, you know, purely and simply out of frustration that I packed my bag and went to Spain, not knowing anyone, and just tried to do something else with my life. I said to myself, even if it doesn't work, at least I will learn the language. And that's how I got out. And thankfully, I got to Barcelona, and I found a job in a musical theater. And I worked there for about three years. So that's really the job that got me started. And then from there, I went to live in Italy, and then South Africa, England, and then ultimately ended up in America. So I didn't just choose America because it was, no, America just happened. But
there's nothing wrong with America. I mean,
I mean, I've been there for 22 years. There's nothing wrong, you're right. But just to say that I got out of Paris because it was hard back then. I don't know how it is now, but for me, it was very difficult. Voila.
Voila. Anyone else? No? Okay. Merci. Thank you to everyone watching from all over the world. And voila. Thank you, especially.